Arsenal win away at the King Power after Leicester try the ridiculous tactic of trying to score past Aaron Ramsdale. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, the Black Man, Twitter, Yankee Gunner. You know, maybe you like Brendan Rodgers, maybe you don't like Brendan Rodgers. Tactically, like maybe he gets some things wrong, maybe he doesn't. But like, you have got to send your team out with a tactic that can win. And the idea that you should try to score goals past Aaron Ramsdale, like that's just dumb. Don't do that. That's never going to work. But they did try it, and no, didn't work. No surprise there because it can't be done. So good stuff. Yeah, we will talk about Aaron Ramsdale and the day he had, and it was quite the day. And you know, he certainly soaked it up and seemed to enjoy it with the fans. And his character matched his performance. Let's say it that way. But there were other good performances on the day, and I think enough little question marks about some of the things we did that we can tease out, I think, a pretty interesting debate there. And I'm sure I will be the one probing at those issues. You'll be surprised to hear. But all things being equal, very good results around the board. Now, maybe one of the bad results with Spurs getting hammered by United, the upshot is it keeps Ole in a job. The downside, you might say, is that it has cost Nuno his job, and Antonio Conte looks set for the Spurs job. Now, Spurs are shit and they get battered wherever they go, so I'm not too worried about it. But I think it would have been nice if Nuno could have stayed in the job a bit longer. It's funny, on October 16, I tweeted, I love that United battering Spurs in the middle of this really difficult run is going to be the result that keeps Ole in his job a while longer. What I did not predict is that it would be the result that sent Conte to Spurs. So that's a textbook example of you win some, you lose some. But we win because you are here, and we love you for that. So thank you. We're going to dive into another Arsenal victory that sees us now within touching distance of maybe even being a top 4 side if West Ham would start to remember that they're West Ham for a minute, which would be nice. And to discuss that and more with me here is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Roberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And Clive. You can find him on Twitter, Clive PFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Do want to make one announcement. I have not yet had time to listen to the Arscast. So if this episode is terrible, it's only because I have not gotten the ideas for it yet. So I apologize for that in advance. So Tim, we're just going to have to wing it. We're going to have to come up with something to say that spawns from our own brains. We'll see how that goes. Look, I do want to talk a lot about Aaron Ramsdale, but let's not start there since that's not really how the game started. I think what was so exciting to me about this game was how, you know, in other games we've started fast and not always finish fast, but we didn't necessarily make that period of dominance tell. We really did in this game. We started fast, we pushed them back, we created the openings, and there was just a lot to like about the pace and intention in our play. I'm curious, you know, if you see anything that you can specifically identify that's a little different about what we're doing now, how we're playing now, that's giving us just that bit of cutting edge that maybe had been missing for a few weeks there, prior to the Villa game.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we spoke about how like having 2 forwards helps us to press from the front a bit more, and having Smith Rowe and Saka who can go both ways on the flanks, and Partey and Sambi in the middle as well. That's all quite athletic. But I wonder if it makes me look at the Crystal Palace game in a slightly new light as well. In that we started that game really quickly and dropped off, but only scored 1 goal in the time that we started that game quickly, and then we had the drop off, and it wasn't quite the same, I don't think, because it wasn't like we were calling off the dogs. I think it was more like Palace switched something and the game changed. I think it was more Palace forced us into that timidness, but
justifiably beat City at the weekend too, by the way. So maybe a rethink on who they are.
Yeah, exactly. And so I do wonder if actually, the last 3 games have maybe been more similar, but with kind of slightly different outcomes. And obviously the next step is to, as you guys discussed on the instant reaction pod, like control more of the game, or when we're controlling a game, seeing it out without that meaning defending, perhaps that just meaning possession and seeing things out. But I also think that the kind of new formation, like it's new, the kind of whatever you want to call it, 4-4-2, 4-2-2-2, whatever, is quite new. And so teams probably haven't quite sussed it yet. I mean, maybe we'll get onto this. I do think in the second half, Leicester did suss it, and they found some spaces in it. And maybe that's something to consider going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive me, my daughter's like just absolutely gone mad in the background there. Not quite sure why.
I love it. It could be because of the opinions I'm about to bring on the episode.
Maybe. But I think Leicester also made an adjustment and found some spaces in it. Like Palace, Villa and Leicester, they've all made adjustments at half time. And I guess that shows you that maybe they've been a little bit caught off guard, and probably our next opponents are going to be a bit more prepared for it. They're going to be waiting for that first 20 minutes from Arsenal, and they'll say to themselves, right, ride this out, because after the first 20 minutes, let's see what they've got after that if it's still 0-0. So there's definitely some data points to consider going forward, and we're still like a bit of a mystery, I guess, for teams at the moment, which kind of helps. But also just having like the athletic profile of that kind of midfield four and front two, it really helps us to do that, to really, really kind of get after teams. Like, you look at some of the players who perhaps aren't playing at the moment. Can you do that with Xhaka? Can you do that with Pepe? Not so sure, to be honest. So just having like that more sprightly front six, I think, does make a difference as well. And I'd be really interested to see whether we can do it without those exact six players.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It is. I think particularly a lot of focus was on Pepe after the League Cup game, and seeing the way I think Saka was really economical with his play and effective in this game. It was an interesting contrast. Now, ironically, Saka did get into a couple dangerous positions late where you think maybe Pepe does more with those opportunities in terms of end product, but I think we just see a cleaner, more technically effective player, when he gets to that final third, the decision making. And so it is interesting to compare and contrast those things, Clive. I think one player that I want to touch on before we get to the heroics of Ramsdale that wound up being the story is Gabriel. He gets the glancing header for the goal. He's just starting to feel a little like that elite dominant force front to back that we haven't had in a central defender in a long, long time. I'm trying to think of the last central defender who physically sort of profiles like what he gives us. Maybe you have to go back to like a Sol Campbell. I'm trying to think of someone in the interim period, and I'm drawing blanks there. Not that we haven't had some good players like Koscielny and stuff, but he really is developing into that. And I'm curious how you look at his influence, because there was so much attention on Benjamin White, and obviously Nuno Tavares coming into the team and adding something unique, and Tommy being new and Aaron Ramsdale being new. The one piece of the puzzle back there that is the piece that we sort of know and has been around is Gabriel. So it was easy to not be focusing on him as much because there's literally new pieces all around him. But kind of under the radar, I think he's becoming one of our players of the season and one of the elite defenders in the league. And that evolution from him, as much as anything, I think is critical to our improvement. So is it time to pay a little more attention to poor Gabriel Magalhaes?
Yeah, I think he's that rock player. I mean, when we spent £50 million on Ben White and people expecting him to be the rock, I wasn't one of those, because I thought this guy is that player. The reason when it first came to me was, I said it before, was how he played against Kane and how he played against Rashford and in his first year, and I saw it. I said, that's good enough for me. When there's a fight on the pitch, him and Tierney are first over the hill, and I quite like that. So he's obviously got his personality about him. I will not be physically intimidated by anybody. Then you look at how he plays, and he can move. He can move on. He can defend on a halfway line, and he can also defend in his box. And there's not every defender can do that. That's a unique thing. Sol Campbell was like that, right? He can head aeroplanes out of his box, but you can't run him from the halfway line. And you look at our defenders in recent years; they can't do all of those things. Koscielny really was our equivalent in the older days of Kolo Touré, if you know what I mean, like a covering defender. But we never really had the rock next to him, so he was forced to do both jobs, continuously until maybe Mertesacker came along. He was a different type of player. And so if you look at his attributes, he's got them all. And so what he didn't have was a bit of luck on a couple of yellow cards. And he was a little bit rash. He, went fishing for the ball with his left foot on occasions, gave away a few fouls. So people called him a bit rash. But really, the issue was he was 22 and new to the league, really. Just give him a bit of time. So he's had that time now. I firmly believe that a team has a psychological profile to it, and you need certain psychological profile players to make up a team. And I think a team needs these sort of structural figures, rock-like figures. In the last few weeks, we've added a couple into the back line in Tomiyasu and Gabriel. And in recent weeks, we've added one into the front line in Lacazette. And these players would like to take on a more of a dominating physical way in how they play, and which it creates an environment for other people to be who they need to be. And I think it's helped the younger players in our team, having these players who can deal with the ball, deal with the first ball, or deal with the first exit, make sure they control their one-on-ones. You can add Party to that. And these structural players have come in and have given us a level of stability. And since they've all played, we've barely lost a game, right? So I think what Tim was talking about earlier on about Lacazette, I think this topic's a big one. I mean, maybe I shouldn't go here. This topic's a big one because wherever the system is, it matters, but it doesn't matter. You can put the same shirt number on Lacazette, and the way he plays that role to Odegaard means our eyes open up to a different system because of the way he moves, where he goes, how he approaches the game, what he sees as his game's priorities. And I think that's different to Odegaard. And Tim wrote something on Twitter, which I thought was genius, right? So, and Tim, if I get this wrong, tell me, right? But he says something like, there'll be a day when you need a hammer and there'll be a day where you need a scalpel. Something like that, was it? Regarding Lacazette and Odegaard.
Correct.
And I thought that was really smart. I think because there will be a day we've got a team push back and we'll be begging for Odegaard. We'll be begging for him to slip a dink pass with backspins onto someone's foot. At this moment in time, this team needs structure. It needs high intensity. It needs to give younger players confidence to have a couple of dads up front doing all the work for them, carrying the team. And I think this is where we are today, but this will change going forward. And another thing I'd like to say quickly is, everyone's looking at his Odegaard or Lacazette, but I've got this sneaky feeling, whether it works out or not, the player that's probably closest to Lacazette doing this role is probably Pepe, and Odegaard could end up being one of these semi-wide midfielders, either on Saka's side or Smith Rowe's side, a tucked-in midfielder in a box that can create from that side, rather than being the second forward, if you see what I mean, or 1+1. I think that's something for us to have a look at. I think it could be the next phase of us when teams do start to suss us out.
Yeah, I feel bad for poor Gabriel because I'm saying, is it time for us to really appreciate him? And still no. Still no. It's time to talk about everybody else.
Well, I appreciate him, mate. As you know, I appreciate him massively. I almost feel like I'm repeating myself. So for me, he is the rock of the team, and I wouldn't want anyone else there, put it that way. And I mean that sincerely. Who else would you want there?
No.
I think he's that good.
He really looks to be that good. And I think when you change so many pieces, think about it. Changed our right back, our right center back, our goalkeeper, and now for a while, our left back. All changed. One of our central midfielders in front of him changed. That's a lot of change. Arsene Wenger used to famously say he didn't want to make a certain number of signings in the summer because he thought too many destabilized the team. And for one young center back to have to be the one point of consistency there, I think it's a big responsibility, and he's handled it so well. So I just, I didn't want to overlook him because I think he's a guy who could have been the man of the match in basically every match this season, but just sort of seems to be eluding the praise he deserves because there are new players who are exciting, or there's, a cool goal scored and that gets the focus. Well, let's stay then on the topic that Clive shifted us to in his role as auxiliary host. Easy for me to say. Tim, the Lacazette Odegaard thing. First of all, I think it's a little harsh on Odegaard in one respect. Lacazette is playing the 10 in the way that I'm sure Odegaard would kind of like to, right? Like drop in a little, connect play, set up the forwards, and then get into the box maybe, although Lacazette I think is more well-suited to the latter part. The last few times we've seen Odegaard play as a starter, it was from much deeper, right? I mean, that really poor performance he had, he was basically in central midfield, and I don't think that worked at all. So when he came on in this game, I thought he was really good. He had two really beautiful disguise passes to Saka, both of which could have been goals, I thought, if they were handled a little bit better at the end product. But speaking of Lacazette, where I think he's really made a difference, first of all, just the pure running he's putting in, but he is a good presser which doesn't get enough attention. And because he has that bigger body and the strength, he can kind of connect play with while pinning someone on his back and pull people out of position. It just seems to work. But I also think that there is a sort of timer on it because he does not have the fitness to do this role at this level for very long. I think he made it, 57 minutes in this game. I do think he's maybe been told by Arteta, run yourself into the ground, tracking back, pressing, dropping in, getting into the box. I'll give you 50 minutes to an hour. Give me everything you've got, because I don't know that he can play this role for the full 90. But so do you think that there's something to that he's just being used for that very specific role for as long as he can do it, which in this game, I think, like I said, was under an hour.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a lot to that. Like, even if he wasn't doing that, he's always been like a 60, 70 minute player, but maybe it's give me a bit more and maybe you're a 55 to 60 minute player. I think the distinction between the way he'd play that kind of role and Ødegaard, I guess the between the lines role, is that the difference is that Lacazette is coming from the edge of the area and coming to meet the ball, and then you're kind of hoping that in that Firmino way that he brings a player with him and creates space behind. Yep. Whereas Ødegaard will come from deeper and go forward, whereas for Lacazette it's a bit more of a back to goal thing and kind of setting the play, and you see like loads of those nice kind of touches with his back to goal, almost like Giroud used to do in a way. And so there's definitely that part to it. I completely agree. I think he is very good at pressing because he's good at, first of all, he's really good at buying fouls, but he does it in the same way that he tries to get the ball back, in that you rarely see him like tackle or intercept. He gets his body in the way, he gets his body between the man and the ball, and he tries to kind of fish it out. And it's that, because when you do that, if you do that successfully, then you're in control of your body, you're in control of the ball. It also means that you can probably make a lot of fouls, because you're always on your feet. So even if you foul like 6 times like that, you probably don't get booked, to be honest, because you're not sliding about all over the place. So I think it is very effective for that purpose. And look, Lacazette's going to go next summer anyway, so eventually we're going to have to fight. Like, even let's say this system we really like it and we decide to just do it all the time, we'd still need to find someone else to do that.
Well, we bought Ødegaard presumably because we need him to be able to do it,
to play that between the lines role, definitely
in a different way. But
and look, we're just talking about Gabriel, right? And we signed him last summer, and he kind of came into the team last year, and he looked good in some places, and then slightly up and down. I think with Gabriel as well, it's more a sense of like a partnership developing. Like, that's definitely, I think, how you should look at centre halves, and like, unless you get like the Van Dijk or the Sol Campbell, and then it doesn't really matter who's next to them quite as much. But what we're looking at here is a partnership between Gabriel and Ben White, and like, Ben White hasn't been brought in to be the chest thumping like leader of that back line. That's not who he is. So like, Gabriel's doing a bit of that. So there's, if we're looking for, even if you were inclined to be, I don't know, worried about Ødegaard's place in this team, then you kind of look at Gabriel and you're like, well, he was in a very similar situation, in that we had a player in David Luiz who was in the last year of his deal, and he was still an important player, but I guess Gabriel had to wait him out a little bit before he could become the senior guy, and we buy Ben White. For Ødegaard, it might be the same. Like, I think Ødegaard will be fine this season, but it might even be the same, when next summer comes and we come to buy that forward, because I'm sure that's the next thing on the shopping list, the forward. We can buy a forward that suits Ødegaard a bit more, and we can say, okay, what are the qualities we're looking for? Who can combine with this kind of 35 million number 10 that we've got? So there are still some pieces to be built in this squad. There's still a couple of pieces to be added yet, and so on some of these players, maybe what's happened with Gabriel, and no one's saying Gabriel played badly last season. In fact, I think he was quite highly rated. It just tailed off after Christmas, maybe when he had COVID and got a bit of an injury and things like that. But we've had to kind of wait to build some defensive pieces around him, like Tomiyasu and Ben White, and maybe it's just the same for Ødegaard at the moment. Maybe that next central midfielder and that next forward we buy, because those are probably the next 2 positions that are coming up in the team. We'll be able to build more towards someone like Odegaard, but I kind of agree with Clive at the moment. Lacazette's kind of doing it, but like I say, I do think Leicester found some spaces in that second half. I think Villa found some spaces in that formation as well.
Yeah.
On both occasions, we'd put the game beyond them by the time they did it, but those are all data points that our next opponents will be looking at. So we might have to be a bit smart about how we use, how and when we use this system.
Yeah, well, we're going to spend a good chunk of this pod also praising Aaron Ramsdale, but in praising Aaron Ramsdale, we're going to have to talk a little bit about why we got in the position where he had to be praised as much as he was. So that'll all tie in there. I do think that it's kind of funny that it's taken this long, but we finally found a way to have Aubameyang and Lacazette on the pitch together that I think genuinely emphasizes what both of them do well for the most part. I know Aubameyang scored a hell of a lot of goals cutting in from the left. So you can say, well, that worked fine. I still think this role kind of looks natural. And Arteta's, was recently interviewed about Aubameyang, said, I like this Aubameyang. This is my favorite Aubameyang. He's, when he's running and working and pressing and doing all the hard work, he looks really engaged. I thought he had another really good game. And to be fair, a day when a couple of players could have been sent off for the opposition once again, and Aubameyang's in on goal. And it had to be really frustrating for anyone who watched the City game. They had a player sent off for a foul that was half of what Johnny Evans did to Aubameyang when he was in. It should have been a red card in my view. And it's great center forward play. Pins him, rolls him, and he's away, but doesn't get the call. Just a yellow card there, which seems like the wrong decision. But thankfully, doesn't punish us. Before we move on to that other stage of the conversation, though, Clive, Emile Smith-Rowe, another goal. It is so important that we find goals from other places than just Aubameyang. We know that Saka needs to add them. Lacazette can certainly get them. We got the goals off corner kicks are coming, which is great. But Emile Smith-Rowe seems like a player who is adding that late run in the box, that second man run that I think has been missing from our game for a while. And while it's, it's not a Golazo or anything, it's well taken. He just seems to have a lot of composure in the box. I don't think he always gets his final ball right when he's attacking the box in terms of his distribution, but he does seem to have an eye for when to pop up in the box and score. I think another not perfect game from Smith-Rowe, but good game, on the ball, driving past players and creating a lot of danger. So in terms of where we get the extra end product from, how do you feel about, Smith-Rowe scoring that goal and his sort of penchant that he's developing for popping up into the box for those second balls?
Yeah, I did listen to the Arscast today, and they did speak about Smith-Rowe being Perez-like, and I totally agree with that. That is
we could do with that.
That is a perfect description, and or Lundberg, doesn't really matter really, because similar the way he plays, he can do the inside and outside job. And if I sort of explain this in the context of the front four, really, so if you look at the front four, you've got in Lacazette, Aubameyang, Saka, and Smith-Rowe, you've got two linkers and two stretchers. So you've got two guys that want to stretch the play, Aubameyang and Saka, although Saka can link as well. But they want to stretch, they want to go, right? So, and you've got two linkers, and Smith-Rowe can link, and when Saka stretches, he links. And it's very, very nice balance. What Lacazette does different to Odegaard is always trying to find space between the lines. What Saka does smartly, sometimes he starts high and he rolls in. So always looks free. So that extra exit confidence has really given us a new dynamic for me, completely transformed us. So Smith-Rowe's falling into a linked role. He hasn't got to stretch the corner flags, although we know he can. We know that Saka can also link play, but we know he's happier bombing and stretching and running through. And Aubameyang now hasn't got to link play, although he can do it on occasions, but he hasn't got to do it. He hasn't got to be the strong guy because someone else is there. So the eternal search for balance, we've found it. We've got the two young academy boys that can all roll back into a flat four as well. Don't mind working two ways because that's how they're brought up. But when we have the ball, they can link and stretch the play. And I think that balance is really key. We used to call it 2+2 in our previous discussions, two scorers, two creators. But I think flip that to linkers and stretchers. I think that's given us balance and given us the exits. When we lose the exits, when we lose that solidity, that's when we lose the regain. And that's when we start to get teams transitioning on us into our broken play. And that's when teams are finding space. And so the challenge for us now, and for Smith-Rowe and for Lacazette, is in the last quarter of the game, or for the team, can we have that solidity of link play continuously for 90 minutes, which allows us to control possession, which stops the transition, which stops people running into disorganised Arsenal team, which ended up with a few shots on our goal. And I think for Smith Rowe, I'm not where Tim was immediately with him. Someone that's grown on me a little bit more. But I'm starting to wonder, again, what we have here, because his ability to feel the game is really, really good. For a 20-year-old, it's really good. The end product stuff was always coming, not a surprise to me, but feeling the game at that age, understanding tactically what to do is really good for a young player, really good. And his body's getting better. He played 3 games in a week. Although he never looks like he's bounding at the end of the game, he's not looking like he needs an oxygen tank needle like he used to last season. So there's still more to come from him. And yeah, I love the way he's meshed into this group now. And he can mesh into any group. And if we're really honest, since the moment he's arrived, the sun has shone on this team.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the truth.
When he's been available, we've been good, basically.
Basically, the sun has shone. It's been more things, but from the moment he arrived, that Boxing Day game, the sun, if you look at our results since then, they're a lot better than they were when he wasn't in the team. So, yeah, top player.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's also happening a little bit, because you have Emil Smith Rowe and Saka and this sort of natural comparison between the two, or duality of the two, the two academy studs that are coming through right now and a huge bright part of our future, is that if one of them is sort of shining in a given moment, then the other one maybe is in that player's shadow. And Saka came in and was the dominant guy. And right now I think Smith Rowe's having a moment, and it's not that Saka's not playing well. I thought he was really good in this game, but so it's not really his moment. And I think we have to fight the urge to be like, oh, well, this guy's not doing well because this guy is. Like, they're both great, and we're lucky to have both of them. So, Tim, I think one of the things that's been really fun to see in this last little run is that we've started pressing more, and it's yielding results. And we always talked about this, right? If we could just win the ball up the pitch a little more, put a little less pressure on ourselves to play back to front 50 passes to create the perfect goal, right? Or have to go the length of the pitch. What a difference it can make. And we're seeing that. But you can't press for the whole game. You can't. I mean, not that aggressively. Maybe you can. Maybe if if you're Leeds and you do murder ball, or if you're Klopp's gegenpress and you've really trained the players to it and gotten them point fitness wise where they're ready and they know how to do it, you can. But we're not there yet. We can do it in bursts. That doesn't mean that the alternative is sit with 2 banks of 4 within 18 yards of your goal and just be pinned back. Now, I want to be clear in how I talk about this. I don't think Leicester battered us. And Leicester are a good team, one of the best attacks in the Premier League. So you're not going to come through the game unscathed. They scored, 5 against United? Or was it 4-2?
4-2, yeah.
4-2, yeah. I mean, I get it. Not that that's hard to do, by the way. LOL. But I do think whether it was the Brighton game or the Palace game or, this game, stretches of a couple other games included in that there is a tendency for these players to get pushed back, compress those lines, and not have the exit, as Clive was talking about. And the alternative isn't, just press for 90 minutes. The alternative is just keep the ball a bit. Now, I want to be clear about something. This is not an Arteta thing in my view specifically, because Arteta has talked about how he wants them to push out more. You can see him exhorting them on the touchline to expand, to get out. He doesn't want this. I don't think any coach would say that.
No.
And when I say this, what I mean is, after the second goal, we went an hour with 29% possession. I'm not saying score 2 goals, keep the ball for an hour and, have all of the ball and wipe Leicester off their pitch. I'm saying keep it a bit, right? 29% possession for an hour. That feels too passive, too deep.
Yep.
And I think there's a happy medium where you should be able to keep it. And so I'm curious why you think we go through these periods, not necessarily where we wind up just so deep, but also where we can't get our foot on the ball and string passes together. Scott had a stat from a few games back. I think it was the Palace game, actually, where after we had scored, we went a period of to halftime where we had 2 sequences or 3 sequences with more than 3 passes. And that seems to be a persistent thing where we go through these periods where we can't string a couple passes together. And I know this is turning into a monologue, sorry, but I find it weird because we have very technically gifted players really throughout all phases of the pitch. So what do you attribute that inability to get control of the ball to? Because I can't really put my finger on it.
So as much as I said earlier, can you imagine I didn't quite phrase it like that, but I think it's less likely with a player like Xhaka, for example, to be able to play like we did in the first 20 minutes of the last couple of games, but this is probably where we miss him. Just as someone to put their foot on the ball and maybe play those kind of, all right, we're 2-0 up passes, where you can go sideways a bit and just kind of wear the opposition down a little bit. As much as our front six is pretty front-footed, like I said, there's not a great deal of control there. Probably Partey's the closest. The other players are young, Smith Rowe, Saka. Aubameyang's not a striker. I mean, strikers, it's very limited to how much they can control a game anyway, but like Aubameyang's not the striker that's going to help you control the game per se. And Lacazette, runs out of beans pretty quickly. So I do think there's that element to it, that we've had this like really front-footed front six, and maybe like your Ødegaards, your Xhakas, if you could do like rolling subs in football, maybe you take like maybe on 20-25 minutes when it's 2-0, you take Lacazette off and put Ødegaard on, and then maybe let Lacazette catch his breath and put him on again with half an hour to go. So I think it's probably a little bit maybe a lack of like those controlling players who can just take the sting out of a game and knock the ball around and do that kind of one-touch passing and triangles. Not least because in these last couple of games as well, we've become, a fairly transition-y as well, which is a real change because we've been used to like really methodical build-up back to front. So I think a little bit of it is just a learning curve. Like that's the next stage, right? We didn't think that we were capable, not that we were capable, that we were willing to do what we've been doing the last couple of games and flying out of the blocks like that. So obviously the next stage is once we're 2-0 ahead, or even if we're not 2-0 ahead, because we're not going to go 2-0 up every time we play like this in 20 minutes. How do we control a game? How do we get control back? How do we go in waves? And you referenced a couple of teams that kind of really do the pressing and things like that. But look at Leeds this season. Like, I'm sorry, I've followed his career quite a lot. I love Marcelo Bielsa, I really do. But Bielsa burnout is a thing.
Absolutely.
It happens. It happens. If he doesn't leave after 3 games, it happens everywhere he goes. It's that simple. And I know they've got a couple of injuries, but Leeds to me look like they've got Bielsa burnout. And with Liverpool, with Klopp as well, they adapted.
I was just about to say it. Yep, they get it too.
Yeah, like they completely adapted. Like they do not play like that every game anymore. In fact, I almost look at like Liverpool's kind of gegenpressing as like a secret weapon that they bring. Well, not a secret because everyone knows it, but they kind of save it for the big games, I think.
Do you remember last season, Tim? They started with this wacky high defensive line thing, and they weren't really pressing, and people were like, what is this? And there were articles before the season even saying, like, the amount of football Liverpool have played at the intensity they have, burnout is coming, and Klopp seemed to try to adapt to avoid it to some extent. Yeah,
and he brought in players like Shaqiri, who was supposed to be, and I think was really like a plan B, more of a kind of controller, creative player.
Thiago a bit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they've kind of not transitioned away from it, but they're looking for more controlling players now, and that's probably just the next step for Arsenal. We've got a couple of forwards who are in their 30s playing, and then we've got like the other end of the scale out wide in Saka and Smith Rowe, and probably what we're missing more than anyone in that period of the game is a Xhaka figure, just that senior, slow things down, 90% passing kind of individual, because like Sambi's too young to deliver that for you. That's not really who Thomas Partey is either. So that I think that more than anything is what we're missing. But I do think there's a large extent to which it's just basic education.
Yeah, Clive, this is the thing, right? I don't want anyone to hear this as we played poorly, because we didn't. We went to Leicester. We took a 2-0 lead. We rode the storm. There were always going to be tough times. And largely, I don't have a problem with that. I think we controlled the game okay for a while, and then I don't know that we were necessarily controlling it so much. There's a fine line, right, between defending a lead and letting yourself get battered. And I think this started to trend to the latter a bit in the second half. And I have had some debates online with people that talk about, well, you can't press for 90 minutes or you expect us to have all of the ball. And I want to be clear, it's not all of the ball. It's some of the ball, right? It's can you have a 10-minute period where you've got 60% possession so that you relieve that pressure a little bit? And, that's something that we always thought of Arsenal. We never even took it for granted, right? We always, when Barcelona used to come to the Emirates in their heyday and have 65% possession, we were aghast. We'd never seen that. Now we've got games where for an hour, teams have 70, 71% possession. So it's just a little bit of getting used to it. And I'm curious how you look at that period. And A, do you view it as critically? And B, why you think it happens?
Yeah, so I agree with Tim's point about Xhaka. I think that's he's a controlling player. And he has caused us a few issues on the press, but he just gives a level of control, and his presence is missed in the boring moments. We haven't got enough boring players, you know what I mean? We wanted people to pass forward, and now all our players want to pass forward at all times, which also gives the ball away. So we need some square and backward passing when we're in control. And that is a tactical adaptation that comes with experience and time. Right. So I think I know what you're saying there. So really, let's get into solution mode. What can we do to control the game in that when we're under a bit of pressure? And I think 3 ways to get over a press, or around a press, sorry. It's through, around, or over. We lose the ability to go sometimes over and sometimes through when teams really push on to us, which Leicester did by taking players out and adding wingers and really pushing on. Although they had some spectacular saves and shots, a few of those outside the area, I think there were 2, one from Lookman and one from Harvey Barnes, or inside the box, if I remember rightly, that were challenging, right? So that's the only times they ran through. On the Lookman one, Partey blocked off the back post, and so Ramsdale could take care of the near post. Easy save for him. On the Harvey Barnes one, I thought the keeper was fantastic. I thought he rushed out, blocked out the light, and that was a great save after they got the run on us. And I think Luke Thomas had a shot also that went past the post. So we're not like letting people into our box too often. So that's not a bad thing. I think a little bit further forward naturally in my brain, and I'm thinking, okay, what can we do in the top end of the pitch? And this is where I think when Lacazette runs out of steam, we just becomes harder to find. And as soon as we lose that ability to have 3 or 4 passes in the top end of the pitch, I think then we lose it. I think on one of those chances that Harvey Barnes had, we played it to Odegaard, he lost it on the touchline, and they went straight through us. And so I think it's how we use our substitutes going forward. And I think Odegaard is, for me, in this system, is a lane 4, lane 5 player rather than a lane 3 player in the number 10 in the central area. I'd like to see a bigger player like a Pepe, a stronger player who can hold the ball, who can be that guy who can get into the air. I'd like to see him come on so we continue a lot of what Lacazette provides us in the interior of the team. And some people will say, Clive, he's not secure enough. He's not secure enough on the halfway line and gives the ball away. But I thought when he came on this game, he offered a bit of control.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
He's got a bit of trickery and ability, and people step away from him. So if you're in the solution mode, look at the players that you have and redefine them. For people who are done with Pepe, I get it. But I can only look at the players that we have today. I think you're the guy who wins the ball in the air off the first ball better than anybody in our team. And in the interior, you turn into a different animal. On the exterior, he plays that role incorrectly for me. Much like Martinelli, they spend too much time in lane 5. Smith Rowe and Saka in lane 4, which means they can flip to 3 and they can flip to 5. They're much smarter in how they combine and how they move. It needs more IQ for me in the outside of the team and more raw talent and the uncoachable stuff in the interior of the team. And this is why I think Pepe could be used. This is why I think for this team and the intensity we're playing, Odegaard at this point in time could be a substitute in the lane 4 positions. Do you see what I mean? In the box positions that allows us to have an attacking mid slightly wider who can link and combine the play. So for me, that's where I'm looking. I think I, again, agree what Tim said, experience, riding the rough moments. I said in the instant reaction that we needed to go through this. This is very important for us to find out we can go through these darker moments. when they are pinging shots on our goal. We come out the other side and the confidence gained will be massive for those individuals because they know they can do it. Before this game started, the fact that I didn't think Arsenal would go to Leicester and impose their game on them immediately, that alone is a huge step forward. The fact we rode out the dark moments as well and come away with a clean sheet, a 2-0 away win, clap the away fans, go home, brilliant. This is a big day for us. This really is a big day for our psychology and our thought process going forward. A big day. We've achieved something. The next thing now is a boring home win against Watford to accumulate points and have a breather before we go to Anfield. And I think solutioning that period, which is important, which you've highlighted it, I think that's the key thing for the coaching staff in the next few days, because managing those moments is the key for this team going forward, because we seem to have found some offensive explosion and confidence.
Yeah, and like it's interesting. There's one thing I picked out from Scott's by the numbers column for Arseblog that I thought was relevant to this discussion, you guys, which is that Arsenal's long passes greater than 30 yards, we completed 44% of them. 84 long passes, only 37 completed. And most of those were in that period where we really didn't have a lot of control. You know, again, I hate to keep referencing that Klopp comment after the City game, but he talked about how when you get pushed back that much, sometimes you stop playing the football and you just want the ball away from your goal and you want that safety. And I do think that we have young players, new players. You look at who's in this team: a young Sambi Lokonga, young Tavares, young Tomiyasu, you know, young and new Benjamin White, and young and new Aaron Ramsdale, and still relatively young Gabriel. And I mean, at every position, these guys are, you know, probably a little bit prone to saying, hey, we're winning away, we're getting pushed back, get it away from our goal. I think a little bit more patience and willingness to ping passes between one another and get it out. The other reason I think that we struggle with this too is when those lines get compressed as much as they do, Clive, like when the midfield line and the back line are so close together and so compressed, you really can't pass your way out because one opposition player can mark two guys. You know what I mean? Can get in front of the space and there's no exit. Like, I think you need distance between your lines to play through the lines, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think on top of that, I agree with you. On top of that, I don't know if Tim notices at the ground, but I've only rewatched it once and I was just smiling. I didn't really see it clearly. But I thought Lacazette and Aubameyang came very deep to win the ball.
Yeah, they did.
To win tackles, you know? And I was cheering for it. Like, oh, that's brilliant. What a great example, great leadership. But we all know that there's no one else up front now. So when we do win it, what happens now? We go long, you know? We go long and we go into areas where someone's isolated or someone's not there. But we did that to ride out the moments, right? You need to see moments off. Every team will have their period. You need to see it off however you can. No one cares when it says nil. No one cares. And Aubameyang and Lacazette, they didn't wait. They didn't say, well, I'm a forward, I'm not coming back. They saw it, they came back and they won it. Of course, it didn't lead to any sort of retention of the ball, but it kept a clean sheet. So it's a tough one, mate. It's one to, you know, when I'm gonna rewatch this one again and I'll come back to you on that one. But yeah.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's talk about the GOAT, because I think even waiting one more minute to praise the GOAT, to celebrate the GOAT, would be 1 minute too long. And of course, when I'm talking about the GOAT, you don't need me to tell you this, I'm talking about the Lawnmower 4.0 from Manscaped, the absolute best, the finest, the most wonderful body trimmer you can possibly own. And Manscaped now has launched 2 new products, an ultra premium body wash and a 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. And this is it. Look, you got a way to trim your body hair, way to trim your ear and nose hair, a way to keep everything smelling good, feeling good, clean. I mean, it's just total body pampering. And you reduce nicks and you use it in the shower and the battery life is long. And it's just an absolute pristine piece of equipment designed to do its job better than anything else on the market. That's the goal there. I do have new copy that was sent. And as you know, we like to focus on the Manscaped copy that they sent me because sometimes there's stuff in there. The last one introduced us to the concept of pants pumpkins. They are already rolling out the holiday copy. Guys, it is way too early for the holiday copy. I mean, Halloween was last night. But this one, let's see if there's anything really uniquely fun. Here's one. Untrimmed pubes are a thing of the past, and it's possible you have Santa's beard in your pants. Now, that could be because you haven't trimmed, or it could be because Santa's in your pants. In which case, I hope you're having fun. Jingle balls to the walls, fellas, is another one that's in here. So there's always some gold in this copy, and I'm glad we can share it. And also slightly cringy. But you know what? Don't let that take away from what they're really good at, which is making incredible products. You can get 20% off and free shipping with code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Promo code ArsenalVision, manscaped.com, 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Oh gosh, the last line of this. Clean up your nuts and make Santa proud this year. I feel like we always keep this highbrow above board. Maybe you disagree, but the stuff that is in the copy, there is a reason I haven't been reading it. Anyway, yeah, this is the good stuff. You want to get it. If you haven't done it already, it's a perfect holiday gift. I know it is way too early to be talking about that, but manscaped.com, promo code ArsenalVision, 20% off, free shipping. It's almost Thanksgiving season here in America, and it's a time when a lot of people go back home and see past flames that they haven't seen in years. And maybe it's time to rekindle those flames. You want to be ready for that. Anyway, enough of that. Clive, is that enough?
Yes, please. If I get one of these, will you stop doing these adverts?
Just sign up for Patreon, man. We've got ad-free versions on the Patreon. You know that.
I am a patron. Okay.
Nah, yeah, you better be. You better be. Because there is A+ content there. Like your rewatches, I would recommend you watch one. You do a brilliant job on them. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to the actual GOAT. All kidding aside. Tim, Aaron Ramsdale, good at the football. It is such a delight when someone can come in and not just overturn, the narrative and the expectation around a signing. I mean, look, you guys know that I've never been huge on goalkeepers and the impact of goalkeepers. I think you need a good one, but that's just about it. It's never been a priority area for me. But when they come in and have this kind of dominant personality, it's fun. He's just a fun guy. The time when he did the long kick and celebrated with the Leicester fans and, giving his shirt and his pants and his gloves and his everything to the fans after the game, he's really taken to life at Arsenal, quite obviously, which is beautiful to see. But that stuff would all be sideshow nonsense if it weren't for how he's playing.
Yep.
I don't know which we should focus on more. Things like the stunning free kick save, or things like the stunning sidewinder long kick up the pitch, the varied distribution. The saves are great. The distribution, I mean, there was a period, to be fair, as the game wore on, where maybe he went long ineffectively a few times. But Tim, he is making a difference. And the camaraderie of the back five just seems fantastic. And even when Leno was playing short a lot, it wasn't varied, right? It was just knock it to the center back 2 yards away and hope it goes well from there. This is a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And it's funny, because I always have this thing about people undervaluing introverts. People always think there's something wrong with you if you're introverted, or that there's something they've got to change in you. And actually, introverts are very, very valuable. I say as an introvert myself.
Yeah, me too.
But I think, I guess building on what Clive was saying earlier, like this team, just the balance between introverts and extroverts wasn't right. Because you need both, right? You need both in pretty much any workplace, I think, but certainly in a sports team. And what we had was we just didn't quite have the balance right there. And we've brought in, Ramsdale, very much an extrovert. And I was listening to David Seaman on the Arsecast on Friday, and he was talking about, you look at the best two goalkeepers, when I was around, it was me and Peter Schmeichel, completely different personalities, but we were both at the top of our game for very different reasons. And actually for David Seaman, who as a goalkeeper was more, I'm not sure introvert's the right word, but, calm, composed, whatnot. And he was playing behind the back four he was playing behind. And he kind of said, I didn't really need to do that much talking or shouting, to be honest, behind that back four. It was much more, just about kind of holding my position and making interventions where needed. And he said, Leno's a lot more like me. And he said, but Ramsdale's much more like Schmeichel was. And that's I think Arsenal need, whether it was in goal or somewhere else on the pitch. I'm not really decided on whether the fact that Ramsdale's the goalkeeper and is quite extroverted, or whether if we'd have just bought a midfielder like that, whether that would have made a difference, whether it had just been anywhere in the team. But I think Arsenal did need a character like that somewhere, and probably in that back line, because it's all quite new. And when you look at them, a lot of them haven't been there for very long. So does Tomiyasu or Ben White or even Tierney, do they feel like they can yell at each other yet? So having a guy behind them who will yell at them, It probably has some value. It just like creates a bit of a balance, particularly in that back five unit. And yeah, absolutely. His long distribution, I mean, he should have either set up a goal or a red card because that long kick for Aubameyang, how that wasn't given as a red card, I really don't understand the justification for that. But
I mean, the one given in the City game is not as bad.
Yeah. But that kind of that Edison style kick, that kind of, okay, if you're going to press our centre halves, I can go over the top of you. And by the way, Aubameyang can run in behind. And so particularly he can definitely run in behind Johnny Evans, who's a good defender, but not very fast. No. So that he has brought something beyond just the saves. And I don't even just mean like the connection with the fans and things like that stuff is important, but he's brought something beyond all of that, I think. And I think the distribution's a big part of it. And it's not just the distribution in and of itself, but like there's a bravery in it with the way he does it. Like there's a hell of a lot of personality in those passes. They're not just good passes. It's very, I'm going to do this. And that sets a standard, that sets a tone. That's kind of, if I'm playing that pass, you can play that pass, you can play that risky pass, you can play that line-breaking pass. Like, it just raises the standard slightly for what's expected. And, you look at someone like Gabriel, I think his distribution's definitely improved, albeit I think a lot of that's because Xhaka's not in front of him, which is not to blame Xhaka. It's just, if you're the left centre-half and Xhaka's there, you defer to him. Whereas without him, he's had to be a bit more, do a bit more on the ball. And I just think, particularly having that at the back of the team, just having that guy that says, I'm doing this, I'm playing that pass. And you can hear in the crowd as well when he plays it, you get that kind of that intake of breath. And it's not just because it's a mixture of reasons. It's because the pass is good. It's because it's brave. But also what's really clever about some of those passes, particularly the ones that go across the ground, is no one sees them. That's why everyone gasps, because everyone's like, I don't know, your eye is just trained when the goalkeeper gets the ball, and you either look at your centre backs or you look at your back four, because you think, okay, he's either going to roll it to the back four or he's going to smash it to the striker. Those are the only two things a goalkeeper tends to do. So when he then plays it like often along the ground, off into midfield, into the centre circle, it takes you by surprise. And you can tell it takes the opposition by surprise as well, because it's almost like, I know Paul's fond of that gorilla analogy in basketball, the kind of optical illusion, where I'm not going to explain this very well, but just like Google gorilla basketball optical illusion, because it's absolutely amazing. Because all of a sudden you look and you go, oh yeah, there's an enormous 50-yard like red carpet between the goalkeeper and the centre spot. How did that happen? And the opposition go, oh wow, we've all been so focused on marking the centre backs and the full backs that we've just left that enormous space. And I think it just gives the team something. It just gives them that little bit of impetus. And yeah, of course, he's making like some pretty good saves as well, because he's just fearless. And I think a goalkeeper should have that element of fearlessness. So, he could have been the free kick, the Maddison free kick, very similar to Ødegaard's free kick at Burnley. What happened at Burnley? Keeper rooted to the spot, watches it go in. Whereas Ramsdale kind of goes, no, I'm going to throw myself at it. I might not get it, but I'm going to throw myself at it. And he gets rewarded in that scenario. And yeah, just a fantastic moment.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I don't know which martial art it is. I'll say one and it'll be wrong. Maybe it's jiu-jitsu, but there's like one of the martial arts where what you're doing is you're using the other person's momentum against them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's something to that in football, because in football, you have a pattern of play and the other team adapts to it. And in adapting to it, they leave a different thing open. And so you have to use what they're giving you against them. And I think with Leno, what we saw is we persistently went short, period. And when teams knew we were going short, we still went short. And it didn't work. And we didn't do anything else. And what Ramsdale does is, to your point, if they're going to step up and mark the center backs, we're going to go over the top and fade it to the fullbacks making a run, or, put Aubameyang in with a sidewinder bullet, or, play it right to the feet of Saka in the right half space at the halfway line, like whatever the case is, using the opposition's moves against them by playing into what they're leaving available. And we just did not do that enough with Leno, and I think Ramsdale does it as well as can be asked for. So, Clive, it's funny, right? I think one of the reasons I haven't been as high on goalkeepers, it is sort of my idea in the back of my head that 95% of goalkeepers all make the same saves. Sometimes they look more spectacular than others, but most of them make the same saves. And I actually think it's the other stuff they do, their personality, their relationship with their back line, their distribution, that really separates them. Like Ederson and Alisson, like, sure, they make good saves. When I say the name Ederson, it's not saves that jump to mind. Hell, City concede like 3 shots a game. It's playing with the ball at his feet, distribution, sort of the same thing with Alisson. And so I do tend to do that. And like, the fact is, though, every once in a while, keepers will make the kind of saves and go on the kind of run of saves that remind you that that can still be a unique skill where they can separate. And this was a game where I think Ramsdale flashed all of the skills, but certainly that free kick save and the subsequent follow-up, really sensational. And I think maybe it was the Harvey Barnes chance where he deserves credit for the way he blocks all the available space. He's just done an incredible run of looking really confident in everything that he's doing. So, I mean, as picturesque and exciting as the save was, do you think that it's the other things about his game that are really making the bigger difference, or does that overlook just how sensational some of his shot stopping is?
Yeah, his shot stopping is there for all to us to see. I think Tim's point about his passing, I think what he's added is a level of disguise, really. And even sitting on my settee on Saturday, that one went down the middle, I couldn't see it coming, and it was just there. You know, so he's just disguising the pass down. There was one he gave away, and Iheanacho had the shot. He flicked onto the post. So there's risk associated to this. And it's only a couple of games ago, the Palace game, on the Edouard shot, when potentially he was a little bit narrow, not quite close to his post. He's got beaten over his head. There will be moments. But what he has done very cleverly, and this is what I like about him, is his ability to compete for his shirt. He's just developed a relationship with his whole back four. And so he's got them all working with him. So they're now a unit. I never felt that with Leno. I felt he's an excellent goalkeeper who got voted man of the match versus Leeds, by the way. Had an excellent game, was really sharp. But he seems to be a goalkeeper that's on his own. He doesn't seem to develop the same rapport with the back four. And he certainly doesn't do it with the crowd behind him, per se. You know, he's a bit more insular, and he just does his job. And he's a very good goalkeeper, make no mistake. But this guy, you're getting a back five with him. Him and his centre-backs are total communication, totally engaged with each other. When there's a tackle, when there's a moment, they're all together. They're all in it. And that's what we want. And they're all getting their clean sheet bonuses. Trust me, that's exactly what you want, is that unit. And that's when you get a winning side from a unit within the team that plays together and that really has the same common goal. And I think he has I never said that before he arrived. It's an obvious thing to say now we see it. But he's come in and recognised this is what this team needs. This is who I am. I'm going to be myself. And I'm bringing them all with me. And I love that about him. I love his intelligence to read the room, understand what's required, and play accordingly. And again, after Leno played so well against Leeds, the very next game he comes out and has a sensational game. That ability to compete and say, this is my shirt, I'm owning it, you're not getting it. That's a great thing for a 22-year-old to have, wherever he is, 22, 23. Can't speak high enough of him. And I don't think anybody could read the emotional impact he's had on the team and on the supporters, you know, and they all love him, you know, and it's really great to see, right? So young people surprise you sometimes, they really do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the only thing that you could say when it comes to football opinions is like, keep having them. That's the fun of sports. Sports wouldn't be fun if we didn't have opinions and express them, but like, stay open-minded. You always say that, Clive, right? Like, be patient, stay open-minded. There's nothing wrong with expressing your opinion, but keep an open mind about it. Yeah.
Be able to. I remember this when Emery was on board. Remember when he was on board and we was in the 22-game run, and I was buzzing. And you kept saying to me, Clive, the underlying data doesn't look good. It doesn't look. I can't. Don't be so stupid. It's just 18 games, mate. What's up with you? And I realised then there's another way. So be open to another way. You know, another way of looking at things. If you're not sure about goalkeeper, don't don't say nothing. Just go and have a look, do some work, and
I
find
want to
out.
add to that too. Yeah, the one thing I'll say, and Tim, you can certainly weigh in on this if you want. I think the other hard thing with goalkeeper is, in my view, it is the absolute hardest position in all of football to analyze accurately, to get your evaluations right, to really know what the hell you're talking about, because a lot of how a keeper distributes the ball is based on system and the team he plays in. For example, Leno played short more than any keeper in the Premier League. Does that mean he's the best short passer? Not remotely. While Ramsdale launched the ball more than any keeper in the Premier League. Does that mean he can't pass other ways? Well, we've seen very clearly that's not the case. I also think that shot stopping is, certainly there's technique to it, but there's also streakiness to it. I mean, how do you explain David De Gea being the best keeper in the world, then being awful, then being great again? How do you explain Chelsea getting it so wrong with Kepa, but so right with Mendy? These are tough positions to analyze. And so maybe more than any other position, you have to keep an open mind because, I mean, look, we are a club that signed Runnerson, granted for a nominal fee to be, a backup's backup, fine. But like now we're the club that signed Leno, who I thought was quite good. Let's be honest, he was. And we signed Ramsdale, who looks amazing. So Tim, this is a position of high variability, a really hard one to get right. And it looks like we've gotten it massively right. And maybe it's a reminder that specifically with goalkeepers, you probably just don't know what the hell you're talking about at any moment. Not you, but all of us,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the sort of position where, this sounds really obvious, sorry, but like you can't hide a player there. Like if you buy a central midfielder that's a bit, that isn't quite what you wanted.
6 out of 10, yeah.
Yeah, you can put another midfielder next to them, or maybe you can put them in another position, or maybe you just sit them on the bench and bring them off the bench. Like goalkeeper, it really is shit or bust stuff. Mm-hmm. And you're right to point that there probably isn't a logical reason that like Kepa didn't work out at Chelsea, for example. Like there's probably no logical reason for that. I'm sure that Chelsea would have used like data, and maybe this is one of the other issues. I mean, maybe because like goalkeeper analytics aren't quite there yet, but they're probably but they're probably not quite there because it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult to do. It's really difficult to access. It's like there are a lot of just intangibles in the position, like aura. And like calmness, and how calm do you make your defense and things like that. And because like you can measure catches and saves, but there's a bit more to being a goalkeeper because it's such an isolated position. It's so much different. Like there is no deferring to your central midfield partner, or we've probably all done that at work, right? When maybe you're on a project or something, and there's someone on your team that's like a little bit better or a little bit more conscientious than you, and you just kind of go, yeah, I'll let them do all the work. That'll be fine.
I don't know what you're talking about. Certainly have not experienced that as the host of a podcast with very intelligent people on it. No idea what you mean at all. Yeah.
And it's, like you can defer, or you can have like, when I've worked in an office and stuff, you can have your hangover days where maybe you just send a couple of emails, and you can probably do that in like not that often at the elite level, but you can have your hangover. I'm just going to send a few emails today and not do anything serious. You can't do that in goal. Like you have to be on it all the time. And it was interesting as well, listening to David Seaman talk on the Arscast again, like about the mentality side for a goalkeeper. And one thing that really struck me this summer, I really, really loved this clip, this moment. And it's such a shame, not just because I'm English, but it's such a shame that it didn't amount to anything. But when Jorginho stepped up and he had to score to win, I just loved the little clip of Jordan Pickford, and he just claps his hands together and he just goes, no problem. And he saves it. And of course, like England missed the next penalty, so it's like it doesn't really matter anymore. But I don't know what it is. I just love that kind of that
psychological warfare.
Yeah, particularly when you're a goalkeeper and you're all on your own, and the odds are massively stacked against you. Like the odds are really stacked against goalkeepers. Like it's the position on the pitch. Like I often think about. Which, if completely randomly, like say I had to play an Arsenal game, where would they put me? Like where's the most out of the way place they could put me? Like, I don't know, fullback, maybe play a back five, or like where could they hide me? And I often think about like how hard it is to be a goalkeeper. Like when you if you've ever done it in like full size goals, I mean, I'm not, like, I'm like 5'9", so I was never going to be a goalkeeper. But do you know how fucking massive those goals are? Even when you haven't got like pros who can ping it in the top corner. Like, honestly, when you play in full size goals against a goalkeeper who isn't like a pro, you don't have to hit the corner. Just like, don't hit it down the middle and you'll probably score. Goals are massive. And so the amount of work, like physical work as well, that goalkeepers have to do to be able to fill and command that space is absolutely incredible. And some of the physical feats as well that you need, and obviously the mental side of it, because you're not as involved in the game necessarily. So there's so much that goes into it that I think is really, really difficult to pin down, and like your response to mistakes and things like that. And and it's very, very difficult to get a measure of that stuff. And one of the ways that clubs like Arsenal have suffered, and plenty of other clubs, like, because you look at that mid-table goalkeeper that looks quite good, and he probably is quite good, but you just don't quite know until you buy him, until you buy Richard Wright. Man U went for Mark Bosnich when Schmeichel retired, and Mark Bosnich had consistently been one of the best keepers in the Premier League. Not at Man United, he wasn't. Like, it's very, very difficult to make that judgment, because a lot of goalkeepers, probably more than any other position, have the talent, but can they adjust to, the amount of saves they have to make, and the mental side of it is very, very difficult, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, all you have to look, people know that soft factors aren't my favorite thing. Being a goalkeeper is like 99% mental. It really, because they're all good. I mean, obviously you have to be good first, but then look, there are heartbreaking examples. Like, look at Loris Karius. What happened to him? Right? The errors. Wasn't he the one who made the errors in the Champions League final?
Yeah, and like good goalie, but
yeah, and then crumbled. And I mean, David Ospina was a guy that we got who just seemed to like lose his mind from time to time, do crazy things that don't make a lot of sense. I think it is a position where you've got to have such a mentality. Because the other thing is like, and this is maybe why signing these keepers who get relegated or get battered can be good, because like, what happens to a keeper when 50 goals go past them in a season, 70 goals go past them in a season? Like, you could be like, well, that means they're shit. Well, they also could have saved hundreds of shots in that season. Like, when you play for Sheffield United and the team is terrible and you can see a mountain of goals, the one thing you can say is you've got to have a rock solid mentality to be watching that amount of goals go past you every week and still pull yourself up, believe in your talent, save the ones that can be saved, right? Be named player of the season for teams that are conceding an avalanche of goals. There's a strength that comes with that versus someone like an Ederson who's like 15 goals go past him in a whole season. Would he work at a Watford? Probably not, right? So this is all very complicated. And I think whatever the calculus is, it has produced the right solution for us with Ramsdale, and a guy that feels like he belongs at Arsenal, wants to be at Arsenal. Leno was a player of the season for us, but like, there is something about the way Ramsdale wants to be a part of this that I don't think we ever had with Leno. And so it's great to see. Clive, I want to pick a few more bones out of this one, though, and there's an issue that's coming. I want to just touch on this really quickly. There are two players, Tavares and Sambi Lokonga, who look like they're going to have their position held down for a little while longer. I think Tierney's not running yet. Is that what the update was? And we don't know when he's going to be back. Maybe soon, maybe not. Xhaka's still quite a bit away. These two players have the chance to make a position their own. That's how it works, right? You just need an opening. I mean, it was Debuchy gets injured from a bad challenge against Stoke. Was it Arnautovic, I think? And Hector Bellerin becomes the guy and was very good for years. That maybe is happening with Tavares right now. That's probably an overstatement, to be fair. But like, I definitely think he is catching the eye and playing at a level that maybe we didn't think he was ready for. So I'm curious with these two players, maybe more Tavares than Sambi. Is it a guarantee that Tierney walks back into the team? I'm not saying Tavares has been, two games, he's a world beater, but he's certainly added something. And I don't think it is a foregone conclusion that he can't at least put himself in the frame for this to be his position, at least, a consideration.
Yeah, he's like an Alphonso Davies lookalike, and he plays like him, and he just brings a lot of bombastic qualities you can't miss.
Ooh, there's a good 5-star word. I love it.
Yeah, but you can't miss him. Everything is just so extra. And there was one run he made late in the game. I don't know, it must have been 80 odd minute, and Smith Rowe went the other way. And if he just reverse passes it, he's in on goal. When he made the run from the left hand side, I think he played in Saka or Lacazette on the right, and he was thinking about a shot on his right foot. The fact he can shoot from his right foot from 25 yards tells me that somebody has scouted him absolutely excellently. And it was interesting when we got him, there was a bit of Benfica fan feedback saying he's a bit of a wrong un. Well, I can't see it yet. People say, "Oh, he looks a bit raw." Well, he's raw. He runs like the wind, can jump out of his boots into the sky. He's 2-footed. He can travel with it. He's an ex-winger, so he can stop, start, step over, go around you, cross it. He can chop inside, right foot, shoot. There's just a lot of raw materials to work with. And one thing I do guarantee, whether Kieran Tierney will guarantee to get back in or not, what's going to happen with a 21-year-old? He's going to have a dip at some point. And this is just a much better position to be in, with people competing against each other. We've seen it with the goalkeeper situation. It lifts the levels of the position. And this is exactly what we want in other areas. So we do need a centre-back to come in and really push the two that are looking peerless at the moment. Because when Gabriel went down, we were all thinking, oh my goodness, this is a problem. Right? We don't want to feel like that. Liverpool have reacted to Van Dijk's injury and brought in Konate. Right? They can't feel like that again. And they lost their Champions League position. They managed to recover it. You can't be that exposed. The gap in quality is too great. And so I'm not worried about the left back. That will sort itself out. It really will, Elliot. And I think Kieran Tierney will say, you know what? I need to step up now. I need to step up and raise my game. That's only going to be good for all of us. We need a few more. We need another right back, I'm afraid, to come in. And what we did with Hector Bellerin was actually the wrong thing to do, because he was the guy, and we never gave him the guy to allow him to rest. And I felt we overplayed him. I think it was a major factor in his Arsenal career ending in a bit of a flat line. So I think we must make sure we have these good quality backups to allow these guys to have their dips, have their moments, and someone else come in and completely keep our levels high. Whoever comes out on top, and we go from there.
Yeah. What about you, Tim? I mean, these are two positions. It's funny, right? Because I think there's a lot of people very excited about Tavares, myself included, that might be getting a little carried away where he is in his development. There are a lot of people maybe less excited about Sambi Lokonga, not because he's not playing well, but just because Tavares has been a bit more eye-catching, but who might have stronger opinions about who they want to start when the sort of nominally first-choice guy comes back from injury. So Tavares, maybe more eye-catching, Sambi Lokonga doing enough to maybe make the argument? What do you think of the future of these positions?
Yeah, Tavares looking very good to me. One thing I thought this looked like a nice controlled performance as well from him, that I possibly hadn't seen before, from a very small sample size, admittedly. One bit I loved in the first half was when he drove inside. And he because he got the ball out on the left flank, but then he kind of made a beeline inside and ended up running towards the centre of the goal. And we've seen that run a couple of times because he can go on his right foot. Sometimes the pitch just opens up for you when, the ball's out wide, and it can be quite easy to defend one-footed players because, they're going to go in one direction. But he saw a gap and he went for it, and all of a sudden it travelled right to the edge of the area. And look, that's something Tierney doesn't have at the moment. It's that simple. So if you're looking to take a place off of someone who's, quite well established, find something you can do that they can't. And that's something. I'm not saying on that basis alone he must now play ahead of Tierney. And I do think, perhaps it's been a little bit overstated, perhaps, the extent to which Tierney hasn't done it yet this season. I just think the expectations are sky high. He's a fullback at the end of the day. He can't be making and scoring goals for us all the time. The fullback role is much more about stretching teams and creating threat. And I still think he does that. I'm not saying to the best of his ability, but I think he's done that a little bit better than people have kind of I think what Tierney's maybe suffering from is how it goes with players when there's a lot of hype and you go, oh wow, this player's absolutely amazing, he's next captain, he's the best player, And then very quickly that turns into when it goes down 1 or 2%, it's, oh God, this guy's not doing it. Maybe he shouldn't play anymore. And I don't think either was true about Tierney. I think it was a little bit, people were too high on him, and now people are too low on him. He's still a really, really good fullback who does a brilliant job. But what Tavares is showing is that at the moment he's not going to be like one of those useless backups that you go, oh my God, Tierney's out, we can't play this clown. Like, he's absolutely fine there. And if he continues like this, then he creates the conversation about whether he keeps his place, and that's absolutely great. And he's been. I won't go as far to say as a revelation, but I don't feel like we've missed Tierney that much, and that's saying a lot, because Tierney is one of he's one of the, I guess, the generals of the team. And Sambi Lokonga as well, really nice player, really, really kind of coming along. Like I said, I still think maybe in those moments when the game's going against you, or the other team's got momentum, like that's maybe where he's got a bit of a learning point. But I just love his bravery on the ball. I love the way he gets on the ball. I love the way he can go both ways. I love that little feint he's got as well to get him away from trouble, or just sometimes just to move a marker. You know, you've got someone blocking a passing lane and you do a little shimmy and you move them. Like, he's got that as well. Like, he clears passing lanes for himself to kind of pass through the lines. So I've really, really enjoyed him. I think you can still see with both of these players, they're not there yet. But what we're also seeing is that we're not talking about enormously missing the players they're coming in for, and that's exactly what you want. And even if they don't really get much better, which you'd expect them to given their age, that's still good. They're good backups. That's good. And you know, good backups who are like 20, 21 years old, that's good. And you think they can get better as well, and maybe they can take this place off of the player ahead of them.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I sometimes I overfixate and stress on the players that aren't playing, or, what are we going to do about this guy that's good? Because now we have two guys that are good. And like, that's actually not bad. So don't stress about
sometimes.
All the time. I stress about everything all the time.
Can I just add one thing on Tierney?
Yeah, I was about to give us something else to stress about, but go for it. Sure.
I think Tierney, he didn't have, he had a bit of a short summer break, and he come back early because Arsenal were playing Rangers, right? So he wanted to play in that game. Then he starts the season, obviously, we're in a bit of a stress moment, and he has international breaks, of which he plays every minute of every game because Scotland are right in the mix for a World Cup qualifying place. So he's had to play all the 90s, 3 in the first one and 2 in the next one, most of our games, and then he was running out of steam before he eventually got injured. We could all see that. And I think managing him is really important. As soon as he has a chance to sit on his arse and get on the sunbed and get the factor 50 out, the player will come back. The problem is he never seems to want to do that. He wants to train at a million miles an hour. I think he needs managing. I think it's important because his only issue for me, is injury and fatigue. I think the way he plays and the way he trains, he just always looks on the edge of fatigue. And I think he needs to be managed carefully, and Tavares allows us to do that. The backup strategy is working very, very nicely so far.
Yeah, no complaints there. And I mean, that's what it should do. And you would love, your ideal situation is you need to use your backups, and you do, and they make a case for taking the starting position. Like, that is the dream scenario. Well, as it stands now, we are in a very interesting position. We are level on points with United at 17, just 3 off third, Man City in third, and West Ham in fourth on 20 points, just 5 off Liverpool on second, and just the 8 off Chelsea. I'm not saying we're going to win the title, but I think it's an expectation we should have, and if we don't meet it, we should be very upset. I'm kidding. But it is exciting. It is exciting. And I think, we talked about this on an instant reaction pod. I think we even talked about this on the last regular pod. Maybe not. You know what? So many pods. I think what we really want as fans is to be able to look at the table and have dreams about what the season can still deliver. And those don't even have to be title dreams. Hell, going into the season, I think a lot of us just wanted to be Europa League dreams. But to be sitting here, after the start we had, 10 games through the season, really more than a quarter of the way through the season, looking at 4th place and saying, that can be ours. That's right there for us. that makes everything else easier. If the football isn't perfect, if there are things we're still working on, if a player isn't in great form, when you're 9th, when you're 10th, when the season feels sort of pointless, all of it's aggravating. But when there's still something to dream about, when there's still something on the table, that changes it. And it certainly makes it easier to be patient and, quote, trust the process when the process looks like it still could yield something really special. We have Sunderland in the League Cup. So that's a trophy that, is still on. Now, there's a lot of, challenging opposition still in that tournament, but yep, that's still on. FA Cup still to come, and 4th place is within striking distance. And West Ham look great right now, but, with Europa League and the size of their squad, that could change. We'll see how it goes. And this is maybe the season where, like Clive said, not having to play midweek will really come back and help us. But we have to touch on one thing before we go. Unfortunately, Tim, laughing at United is great, but have you tried laughing at Spurs? That's the way I look at it, right? If ever I was going to be happy about United winning something 3-0, it would be beating Spurs. It keeps Ole in the job. They've got a hard run coming up. They're going to drop more points. Spurs losing is always funny, but not as funny when it means that their mediocre manager gets sacked and replaced by Antonio Conte. Looks like £20 million. So they are really ready to just start splashing the cash. I don't know where to come down on Conte because I don't love his football particularly, but I can't deny his pedigree and his quality. This is not another Jose Mourinho situation because that's a guy I think we all knew was past his best, totally washed, and we expected him to fail. I don't think we feel that way about Conte, but he's sort of been a checkbook manager to some extent. There is a real question still about whether Kane wants to be there. I mean, inject into my veins, if you can find a way to liquefy Spurs fans booing Harry Kane and inject it into my veins, it's all I would need to keep going for years. But this is a situation that could get serious pretty quickly. Spurs, as bad as they've been, only 2 points behind us, still in the reckoning for the places we want to finish in. So how do you feel about the likelihood that they will get Antonio Conte in the next couple of days, maybe as soon as tomorrow?
Yeah, not great, to be honest, because he is a very, very good manager, and you look at anyone, who could they have got better? Very short list, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously no one, because they spent the whole summer chasing guys they didn't get and settled on Nuno at the last minute.
Yeah, and because Pochettino probably not long for PSG. United. To be fair, I'm not sure that Conte would have been a fit for United just because, not because he's not really good, but because the type of players they've got, they haven't really got wing backs, and Conte doesn't play with a 10, and he likes to play with a front two who are quite energetic, and you're not getting that really from Ronaldo and Cavani. So I think and he doesn't really play with wide forwards, and they've got loads of them. So I think tactically that would have been a difficult fit. I think the Spurs team is really quite set up for his kind of 3-5-2. I'm actually really surprised Nuno didn't try that, given the success he had with it at Wolves. But basically, Spurs have got crap centre-backs and crap central midfielders, so they want to hide them in a back three and in a midfield four, which Conte will be able. Midfield five, which Conte will be able to do, and they've already got a front two that's very high functioning. So I kind of think they're set up to be a Conte team. I guess there are definitely questions long term. Does this, obviously they'll be paying Conte a lot of money. They tried to get him in the summer and he walked away, so they've obviously had to make concessions to him to get him this time. I imagine those are financial concessions, and I imagine those are financial concessions both based on his pay packet and the level of funding they're prepared to put into the team. And so I guess you'd ask the question, what shape are they going to be in when Conte goes in a couple of years' time? And how much of a hole are they digging for themselves financially? Because, they just put that new stadium together and they had over a year of no one in it. So that's quite a big hole for them. And they've kind of looks like they've taken the decision to just try and throw money at it. When maybe you'd look at Spurs and say, well, they're a bit more primed for a rebuild. But then quite a lot of those players are new anyway. Like Vertonghen and Alderweireld have gone and been replaced. Eriksen's gone. Dele Alli is really not there anymore in any meaningful way. Like, kind of most things have changed except Kane and Son. Kane and Son that's the best thing they've got. are the thing they've held on to, but they've actually, a lot of the other players are quite new, and they just haven't made them work yet. But I do think that Conte can get pretty immediate results with that Spurs team. So I'm not happy about it, no, because I think this moves them into being like more of a serious competitor, as you say. And put it this way, like it's a bit of an economies of scale effect, because I was loving the work Nuno was doing, and I think they were kind of primed for a bottom half finish. I know, like, had he stayed the whole season, I think they might have been looking at 10th or 11th.
Yeah.
I know they're only a couple of points behind us, but I even think, like, results wise, they've gotten more than they've really deserved.
Oh,
and I think
they've been terrible.
Yeah, their fans know that as well. You don't win Manager of the Month in August and get sacked on the 1st of November, like, without the underlying, like, you know, I guess to borrow one of Clive's phrases, you can't fool fans, and the fans, they weren't feeling it. Even with those first 3 victories, they kind of saw, no, this is not the football this is not going to be successful football. So yeah, I don't think it's great really for Arsenal, but you know, we'll see. I'm not like foreseeing doom or anything like that. I just think it turns them into a serious competitor again. Yeah,
and it tells you a lot, though, about the direction of travel for us, because at the time when Lampard gets replaced with Tuchel, I think there was a lot of anxiety at Arsenal about, you know, we should have gone for him, and they're being decisive with their manager and we're not with ours. And like, I think it says a lot that you're not hearing that kind of talk with this, you know, and tells you a little bit about the sort of faith that's been restored in what we're doing. Clive, final word. I don't want to talk too much about Spurs because nausea, but yeah, any sense of how much of an issue this becomes? I mean, not even in terms of, Spurs are going to be title contenders, but just, it does start to seem like it's opening up for us a bit. You know, there's fewer clubs that we're looking up at in terms of reaching the targets we want. This certainly, I think I agree with Tim, makes them, again, a team that has to be reckoned with a bit. Do you see it the same or differently?
Yeah, well, my original gut feeling was, oh no, this is not good, right? Because Conte is someone who I really quite like, really. And when Wenger went, he was my choice, you know? So, but you know me, Elliot, I love a back three, and so that was obvious. So, yeah. But then some wise old sages on my Twitter timeline said, Clive, don't stress. This is Spurs, mate. Don't worry about it. They'll mess this up. Levy's had 15 majors in 21 years. What are you worried about? They'll Spurs this up, as they always do. Conte will be out there in 18 months' time. He'll rip the soul out of the club like he does every other club he goes to the moment someone doesn't back him. So he'll be in control of that club. Levy is the biggest issue at Spurs. And how that relationship goes along and how he up a major is going to be really, really key. And it seems to be his way or the highway, right? So that contract and its releases she'll be quite an interesting one. I agree, Tim. Their team is sort of set up for an improvement in a different shape, and we can all see what it could look like. And some of their players are more suited to this, but they still have issues in midfield, in central defence, which they can cover with numbers. They have a couple of wing backs. They've got 2 forwards, which you know about. The players in behind them are so. There's lots to do. The goalkeeper's in the autumn of his career, though he can be very good. There's work to do there for them. I just think it's important that we focus on being the absolute best version of Arsenal we can be and stop looking over the garden fence, because Spurs are trying to be a mini Chelsea and build the brand by just hiring and firing and using their extra revenue from the stadium to pay compensation to people. That's up to them. Chelsea are Chelsea. We know what they do. We know their operating model. They've got a billionaire who has literally putting £1 billion above and beyond the budget that you get from the Premier League into that club. And so we're in a situation where they're doing their thing. We're doing our thing. If we lost on Saturday, this news will be hitting home pretty hard today, no doubt, because that's the way we think. I just more focused on us, really. Be the best version of us we can be. This is who we are. We're building people at our club. That's what we're doing. Building people. And hopefully the results will give us the protective state to allow that to continue. So we're building people on and off the pitch. And I know I like this model, so I'm prepared to go with it as long as we keep winning.
Yeah.
As long as we keep winning. And that allows everyone to have a look at it with objective eyes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, results, it is reductive to only look at results, but in terms of anxiety levels and the extent to which we agonize over negative or, focus on the positive, a lot of that's driven by results, right? I mean, going an hour with 29% possession isn't even worth more than 5 or 6 minutes of conversation when you win 2-0, right? It's quite different if those goals go in and you drop the points. So, as long as the results keep going right, then I'm perfectly happy and no one has to worry about me whining too much. Let's leave it there. 90 minutes on a good win, and we will have a rewatch. Paul has asked to be on that one, and I, for one, am excited for him to be on it. Maybe Paul and Clive can helm that one. Just get rid of me entirely. If that doesn't get you signed up for Patreon, I don't know what will. We will have a special podcast out Thursday, our regular one, but we'll be talking Emil Smith Rowe with the Scouted Football folks who have put out a new volume where he is the cover boy. So I'm looking forward to that. We've got Watford at home at the weekend before we play Liverpool. So really important to pick up those 3 points, and I definitely think we can do it. So we'll look forward to that a lot more throughout the week. Tim's on Twitter. It's Roberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Clive's on Twitter. Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter and Gunner. Now I'm going to go listen to the Arscast and figure out what I got wrong and what topics I missed and try to sneak them into the Thursday episode. So normal service will be restored then. Hey, I hope wherever you are, whatever you're doing great. Maybe eating some leftover Halloween candy or whatever the case may be. But I hope you, your family, and everyone you love and care about is doing well. Up the Arsenal. We love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10. Watford.